Tonight, foster care. Will 3 children in Fort St. John ever recover? Measles update. New cases reported here in northern BC. An injured hiker. One person is airlifted to Dawson Creek Hospital. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. We begin tonight with the troubling findings of an investigation into why, despite multiple complaints to authorities, 3 young Indigenous children from Fort St. John were left in a home where relatives say they faced severe neglect. Tonight, Michelle Bernaro has an exclusive look at how the children are doing now and why their guardians believe they will never fully recover. And a warning, the details of this story are disturbing.
From playtimes,
they love having dance parties,
to bonding times.
I love you.
These 3 siblings, who are now between 5 and 6 years old, have grown both physically and emotionally.
to see them wanting the hugs and snuggles and just them wanting to touch your face and your hair and laughing and giggling with them is the best out of all of this.
We cannot legally identify the children or their guardian, who is also a relative, but she says despite progress, every day still brings significant challenges for the kids who were severely neglected. Multiple reports to social workers were not adequately responded to for almost 4 years.
I sometimes wish we would have just took them illegally.
When the parents finally contacted the ministry themselves in December 2023 to say they couldn't look after the kids, relatives say the damage was already done. Relatives described the children as feral when they first came into care.
I used to work with special needs kids, and I've never seen children like this in my life. The conditions were horror. That's all I could describe it as. They were living in feces, eating feces. There were malnutrition.
There had been early intervention with the kids. I do believe they would be next to normal children. And I do believe that these are lifelong issues that they will have forever.
She says the children stim to soothe themselves. They are not potty trained, and one of them will eat feces or vomit if not constantly watched. The children smash walls and hurt themselves and others.
Scratching, biting themselves, just flailing their arms and legs, kicking things, slamming their head against the floor if they can. And when you do try to intervene, they will attack you. I've had caretakers that have been horrifically bitten. It's astronomical what it's taking to take care of these kids.
A team is needed around the clock to care for the children. Additionally, they have seen countless medical professionals, from psychologists to pediatricians to occupational and behavioral therapists.
We do have a trauma counselor that not only has seen the children, but I also see on a weekly basis because of the things that we deal with.
See, amazing. Amazing.
The children's guardian says the oldest child is repeating words and trying to speak. The other 2 remain almost entirely nonverbal, and yet she says it's been difficult to get them speech therapy.
A 2-year wait list, like these kids don't have that time.
And they're still waiting 8 months after referral to get into a highly specialized program at BC Children's, where they will be more thoroughly assessed. As for schools, she believes it's not an option yet.
Don't think the schools are equipped to handle. I think they would be turned around 20 minutes after they get there.
Their guardian says it's worrisome that getting ongoing therapy and supports for the children leaves her at the mercy of the very ministry that failed them. But she says the children are precious, and she will keep fighting to give them the best life possible. Michelle Bernaro, CTV News, Vancouver.
The BC Centre for Disease Control reporting 10 new measles cases across the Northern Health region since Monday, and this brings the total to 61 for the Northern region. The BC CDC says the new total of measles cases is now at 87 across BC. This means Northern Health is the only health authority that's seeing an increase in cases over the past 3 days. The BC CDC also says the 6 active cases in Northern Health are the only active cases remaining in BC. Health officials are pushing people to get vaccinated. They say immunization is the best way to prevent the measles. The South Peace Search and Rescue responding to a medical emergency in the backcountry near Tumbler Ridge. A group was hiking on Monkman Trail Sunday. They activated their emergency communications device after one individual suffered a burn injury that required immediate evacuation. Shortly after 7 at night, search and rescue was mobilized along with a helicopter. The hiker was transported to the hospital in Dawson Creek in stable condition. South Peace Search and Rescue reminding the public to have a reliable communication device when heading into remote areas. A framing company in Fort St. John facing a fine from WorkSafe BC. Lucas Custom Framing is being fined $2,500. WorkSafe says they cited the company for 2 high-risk violations back on May the 27th. The first violation involved a worker installing roof sheeting. WorkSafe says no fall protection was in place. Also, a parked forklift was left with its load elevated, resulting in a second violation. The BC RCMP is taking responsibility tonight for an unlikely chain of events that sparked a wildfire. The flames burning north of the town of Lytton, where 4 years ago the town was evacuated and almost wiped out by wildfire. And as CTV's Andrew Johnson shows us, the culprit, a tire that came off an RCMP trailer.
An RCMP officer on the side of the road tries to fight flames with a fire extinguisher, a fire that quickly grew out of control.
Tremendously unfortunate.
The RCMP dive team had been at a nearby lake searching for the body of a swimmer who'd landed awkwardly after a cliff dive and never surfaced. The Mounties were heading back to Metro Vancouver, towing their boat on a trailer. RCMP say one of the trailer's wheels suddenly flew off, landing in the ditch and sending up a shower of sparks that in seconds ignited flames.
We meet certain standards with the maintenance of our equipment, and at this particular point, it does appear that equipment simply failed. Accidents happen, and I think that's one of the things coming out of this.
The fire is now burning across more than 1 square kilometer, sparking rural evacuation orders and the closure of a highway north of Lytton. The town that was nearly destroyed by wildfire almost exactly 4 years ago in a region getting disturbingly accustomed to being threatened.
People don't realize this is more of the norm for rural residents. We have had fires here every single year since 21. People are anxious, and it does make you remember. But I also think we need to look at ways that we can adapt and we can be more proactive in dealing with what's happening.
A positive note on the fire started by that wheel flying off the RCMP trailer. It exploded in size yesterday, but has not grown overnight. It is still considered out of control.
And it was also 4 years ago that we began to get a sense of the horrifying death toll from an unprecedented heat wave. The 2021 heat dome has prompted changes in how extreme temperatures are handled here in BC, but has it been enough? CTV's Penny Daflos has a look.
It was a record heat wave meteorologists saw coming, but no one expected it to be so deadly, with British Columbia's medical and emergency response agencies unprepared.
The usual response that we have based on what happened in 2009 clearly was not sufficient.
Poor communication to the public, overwhelmed hospitals, and the collapse of BC emergency health services.
It was apocalyptic that night.
Saw at least 619 people die in the days and weeks that followed. The BC coroner found nearly all had perished indoors. Most were older, poor, and lived alone.
It's indoor temperatures that can be the biggest risk for people.
The health authorities and emergency officials have made big changes to how they communicate the risks of extreme heat and have developed a comprehensive response plan outlining priorities and levels of alert.
Despite all the things that have been done since the 2021 heat dome, we still hear from seniors who are raising concerns about extreme temperatures. There's still confusion around how to get notified about heat warnings, not sure when to leave their homes.
Several studies, including a new one from UBC, are now advocating for what they call the right to cool.
It's not a luxury, and it's interesting to think of this in comparison to smoke alarms. So, when you move in somewhere, you don't expect to pay more because there is a smoke alarm. It is just, basic safety. And I think with the changing climate, we need to think of cooling in that sense too.
4 years after the deadliest weather event in Canadian history, there's no public memorial nor any plans for one. If somebody were to step forward, perhaps a fitting location could be the grounds of the legislature to remind policymakers of their obligations to the most vulnerable. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Vancouver.
Staying with weather events, we're getting a closer look at a tornado that touched down west of Edmonton Wednesday. The twister hit yesterday at around 5 p.m. west of Drayton Valley. It stayed on the ground for about 15 minutes. Environment Canada issuing a number of warnings for the area. There are no reports of any injuries or damage. Airports are running smoothly again after heavy delays today at several major Canadian airports due to reported bomb threats. Earlier today, NAV Canada saying it was made aware of bomb threats affecting facilities in Ottawa, Montreal, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Calgary, and Vancouver. There was a temporary ground stop and a number of delays as a result. A threat assessment was conducted and normal service has resumed at the 6 airports. The impact of Canada-US trade war was revealed in new data today. The numbers give experts many reasons to be optimistic about Canada's efforts to diversify its export markets. Here's CTV's Rachel Aiello on the numbers and what they mean for businesses and consumers across the country.
Canada-US trade is stuck in a tariff-induced rut, according to new numbers from Statistics Canada. Exports of Canadian goods to the United States have decreased for a 4th consecutive month, costing businesses billions.
Businesses are really kind of in suspended animation right now. And you always worry about losing a customer, even if it's just for a matter of months, because there's no guarantee that you're going to get that customer back.
This snapshot of the state of trade with Canada's largest export market comes amid some better news. Canada's overall merchandise trade deficit narrowed slightly in May. Imports fell 1.6% to $66 billion, while exports were up 1.1% to $60 billion. These figures bringing the deficit to $5.9 billion, down from April's record-setting $7.6 billion. The slight rebound attributed to exports of Canadian goods to other countries hitting a record high. Experts say this is a direct result of efforts to diversify Canada's international trade relationships.
What we're seeing in the numbers is somewhat encouraging. I mean, that, exporters, Canadian companies are taking that spare capacity that the United States created or the empty space on the order books and are able to, in some cases, fill it with other markets.
Those I spoke with today said with Canadian businesses working to lessen their reliance on the U.S., the worst may be in the rearview mirror. But until Prime Minister Mark Carney locks in a trade pact with U.S. President Donald Trump, the road ahead will remain rocky. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Ottawa.
And a new report from the United States says barely any of the fentanyl seized south of the border originates from Canada. The study was conducted by the U.S. think tank, the Manhattan Institute. It examined thousands of large-scale fentanyl seizures across 80 U.S. counties along the Canadian and Mexican borders. They found, by weight, about 99% of the fentanyl gathered in large seizures between 2013 and 2024 were discovered in the U.S.-Mexico border counties. The report adds large Canadian border seizures were, quote, relatively rare. And U.S. President Donald Trump's mega bill, dubbed One Big Beautiful Bill, has narrowly passed in the House of Representatives.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
The highly controversial multi-trillion-dollar package slashes Medicaid, Social Security, and clean energy tax credits. The White House says Trump will sign the bill tomorrow on July the 4th. Trump is touting it as a big win for his administration.
You go over the bill, it was very easy to get him to a yes. We went over that bill, and point after point, biggest tax cut in history, great for security, great on the southern border. Immigration is covered. We covered just about everything.
Press on for the rule of law. Press on for the American way of life. Press on for democracy.
The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates that Trump's package will add $3.3 trillion to the deficit over the decade. Trump's bill also strips 11.8 million Americans from their current health coverage. Nissan is recalling nearly 38,000 vehicles across Canada. The models include the 2021 to 2024 Nissan Rogue, 2019 and 2020 Nissan Altima, the 2019 to 2022 Infiniti QX50, and the 2022 Infiniti. XQ55. The automaker says the recall is due to a potential bearing manufacturing defect that could lead to engine damage or failure. In the United States, over 440,000 of the vehicles have been recalled. All right, please do stay tuned. Noah will be right back with a look at weather.